Yo, Jalissa. Wake up. Filter, filter, filter. My mind screams as I swim through the storm, gathering my focus and reassembling my mind. Filter, filter, filter. These things do not need to be acknowledged. I can let them flow through me without acknowledgement. Filter, filter. Jalissa. We have a prisoner transport today. I'm getting up, I call back to my partner, voice strained. Please don't make any noise for a sec. Sorry, she mumbles again. I forgot. It's fine, I sigh. I'm used to it. But seriously, just whisper my name once and I'll be up. Still, I eventually figure out a way to delicately breach the subject. You want to talk about that thing with Vita at all? I comment as the two of us head upstairs. She shrugs, a fresh layer of stress sweat leaking out of her armpits. She's actually kind of lucky in that her stench isn't too bad by stress sweat standards. It won't stand out to anyone else. She stayed quiescent the whole time you were in decontamination. It was no big deal. We both know that's not what I was referring to, but I get the hint that I shouldn't press. Well, that's good, I acknowledge. Quiescent, huh? That's a fun word. Really flows off the tongue. You caught me red-handed, she admits. I just like to say it. We both chuckle at that, and I take the win. She'll talk if and when she's ready, and I will be here if she needs me. Because I'm not allowed to leave. We reach the top floor of the facility, taunting me by dint of proximity to the surface. I'd really like to see the Mistwatcher's golden sky again, but that's not in the cards today. We're just accepting the two new prisoners and escorting them to their rooms. The top floor of Site 4 is an enormous trap designed to kill everyone in it. A magic-powered elevator is the only way to or from the surface, with both the elevator itself and the pathway to it watched at all times, devoid of cover and lined with bolt holes from which spells and arrows can blast through to annihilate anyone stupid enough to walk through without permission. I can hear and feel the various deadly implements aimed at me from all around the room, because you never take allegiance for granted in a prison full of animancers. The glass elevator descends, and inside it two Templars flanking the collared form of a twitching young woman come into view. Her mostly pink hair is obviously dyed, roots of reddish-brown hair showing where it has started to grow out. Her olive skin tone is marred with splashes of pink across one cheek. Her arms and fingers are tied behind her back, and in general she looks utterly miserable, her shaking lower lip joining her involuntary convulsions as if she's about to burst into tears at any moment. Her soul is jagged and broken, stitched back together in a style that I've come to recognize as a relatively early Ars victim. Based on her age she must have been experimented on as a child, probably no more than 3 or 4 years old, then stuck under the thumb of a monster for many years after. The elevator heads back up and returns back down, and it's easy to see why the second prisoner now on it also only answers to Capita. She's nearly identical to the first woman, in both body and soul. What I once assumed was a haphazard splash of paint on her face is apparently quite carefully applied, as even that matches the other Capita perfectly. When she spots her twin she immediately starts to struggle, mewling like an abused cat behind her gag as she tries to step through the glass door and touch her matching experiment. The Templars flanking her yank her back. Oh boy, this is going to be another problem case. Careful, one of the Templars grunts at us as they approach to hand the Capitas off. They're not very strong, but they're feisty. The twins stare at each other, and I can see thin, purple strands reach out from the cracks in the middle of their soles to try and touch each other. The collars give each of them a warning zap, and the threads dissolve as they convulse in response. Is that why they're so similar? Do they use cognomancy to remove their differences? They look so unwell. Is that because of the cognomancy, or because they can't use it anymore? I can see that, I say, nodding at the Templar. Thanks. We'll take them from here. Capita, will you walk with us? I carefully position my gaze between the two of them, trying to make it ambiguous which one I'm speaking to. As I'd hoped, it seems to relax them a little. They glance between me and each other, then nod helplessly, allowing themselves to be transferred to Vicky and I without protest. They walk in front of us, letting themselves be guided down the stairs. So, I say casually, starting to remove the gag of my capita the moment we get to the stairwell. Welcome to Site 4. I know that you two are probably less than stoked to be here, but I promise things aren't as bad as you may be afraid of. No, Capita growls as soon as she's able. Wrong. Do not tear this sketch in half. Huh? I ask. She doesn't want to be called, you two, Vicky clarifies, to my surprise. She's saying that both Capitas are the same person with two bodies. Is that right, Capita? Capita seems surprised, but she nods happily. Yes. Yes. Please, cease separating me from myself. How did you get all that? I ask Vicky. One of Altrix's selves calls herself a sketch, too, she explains, shrugging. Capita just kind of seems like a reverse Altrix, you know. A brief moment of clarity seems to pass over Capita, both of her bodies, I guess suddenly ceasing their constant twitching. Sister is alive, she mutters quietly. Oh, are you two related? Vicky asks happily. Yeah, Altrix is a friend of mine. Work hard and try to get up to level 4 permissions, okay? Then I can set up some dates for you to visit. I suppress a shudder. Holy shit, what a thing to say to a person. Work hard and I will let you see a long-lost family member again. Please, Capita begs, before anything else, let me be myself. Once again, those thin purple threads from each body start snaking towards each other, questing slowly out of their respective souls. I assume that much like Vita's tentacles, the threads are free to move as the collar won't trigger until it senses any mana pushing through them, but once it does. Capita, I need you to stop that, Vicky says firmly. Please, Capita begs. Please. Sorry, I say, feeling like someone ought to. You understand why we can't let you cast, don't you? I know, Capita agrees desperately. I know. Please. I won't run or hurt you. Please. I glance at Vicky, who shrugs subtly in my direction. Unfortunately, Capita won't even be allowed in the same cell as her other half. There's not much either of us can do about that. I can only be broken for so long before the shards no longer fit, Capita pleads helplessly. I sigh. Damn it. Maybe I can recommend a fast track up the ranks. I say to Vicky. And if we get a good enough metamancer we should be able to block off teleportation without too much trouble. Nuh-uh, no way, Jalissa, Vicky protests immediately. If you try to fast-track a cognomancer right after she shows up your ass is going into decantam for a week. I mean, if it helps. Oh, she's probably frustrated that I got authorization to promote Vita up to Epsilon 2 today. I didn't think about that, but I guess it's understandable. I haven't 100% decided if I'm going to do it, but I figure it will be pretty difficult for her to hug that stuffed animal we got on the shipment today if she can't use her arms. Again, so they say. I was 12 at the time? 13. My only real memory of the Ars crisis is the constant fear, waking up in the night to the sounds of battle as his twisted splices fought Templars to death in the streets. The paranoia that any living thing could be one of his agents, or maybe even Ars himself. Your neighbor, your grocer, your dog, there was always that subtle terror of uncertainty that anyone you know and love could be pulled away and warped into a monster without any outward sign of it. That is what people remember when they hear the name Inquisitor. I don't blame a single other Templar for hating me now that I'm one of them. But sometimes we just have to take a hit to do the right thing. No matter how hard we get knocked down, a Templar stands up again. And despite everything, despite my disgrace, that's still what I am. An Inquisitor was needed, so I answered the call. Despite her protests, we lock each capita into a different cell. I promise to return and check on them soon, my mind already spinning with ways to try and help their situation. Maybe it will help if I ferry messages back and forth. I don't know. I'll think of something. I have to. In the meantime, the rest of our day still needs doing. My thoughts a messy jumble, I decide to start my rounds visiting a Gamma 5 prisoner by the name of Jeremiah. He's a learned necromancer who likely knows a bit of cognomancy, though it's never been confirmed. Obviously, he hasn't practiced any animancy since being imprisoned just under a decade and a half ago. Most animancers in the prison were caught in the wake of the Ars crisis, when the lookout for them was at its all-time high. All gathered evidence, and Jeremiah's own insistence, indicates that he was never involved with Ars, but he's the closest I've got, so I still feel the need to ask him a few questions. I knock on his door and wait for him to call me inside, unlocking the room and stepping in. The 40-something-year-old man grins brightly as I walk in, standing up from a rocking chair and snapping the book he was reading shut with one hand. He's a thin, academic-looking man with the occasional flick of gray in his otherwise black short-cropped hair and mustache. His room smells like spices and paper, clean and refined and only slightly disorienting. Ah, jealous of Etta, a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting you until this afternoon. Sincerest apologies, I'll put on a pot of tea immediately. You know I'm not actually allowed to drink anything you brew, I answer, grinning under my helmet. He winks at me. That's no reason to be barbaric, he protests, smiling wider. A gentleman should always offer. At level 5 permissions, Jeremiah has access to a pretty nice if somewhat cramped apartment room, fully furnished with a modest kitchenette and private bathroom. He has often joked that the only reason he's not level 6 is that he'd have to leave his room if they released him back to society, though when pressed he'll admit the real reason. As a moderately skilled animancer, he would need to either consent to having the knowledge removed from his mind or apply to join the Inquisition himself, and he doesn't consider either to be a palatable option. So what brings you here this early? I quite enjoyed our last philosophical scuffle. You're a sharper wit than that last fellow, and, if I may be permitted to say so, much easier on the eyes. You've never once seen me with my helmet off, Jeremiah, I remind him, chuckling at the compliment anyway. He's such a goof, it's hard to imagine him as a dangerous animancer now. At least, it is until I glance at his collar. He does indeed make himself a cup of tea, as usual offering me one which I'm always required to decline. Of course, drinking isn't actually why he brewed it, his politeness is more than just an amusing joke. Most kinds of tea are agonizingly putrid, strong-smelling in all the wrong ways, but Jeremiah pressed me over and over about my favorite kind of tea until I finally gave in and told him about one that I can actually stand the stink of. Now he makes it every time I walk into his cell, and I couldn't be more thankful for it. I sit down in one of the other chairs as he returns to his favorite seat, sipping the warm brew mildly. So, in all seriousness, how can I help you today, Inquisitor? He asks. No Inquisitor stuff, thankfully, I reassure him. At least none beyond the usual. I just wanted to ask, why did you want to learn animancy? He hums, enjoying another sip. That's the kind of question I will have to tattle to your peers if they come asking. I shrug. Yeah, there are a lot of questions like that. Which is a shame, but I get the necessity for it. Still, I want to understand. He nods, considering his answer for a moment. Well, firstly I think it's important to understand that back in my day there was no Ars Rainier, yes, he says. Animancy was still illegal, of course, but a different sort of illegal. You could joke about animancy 30 years ago without anyone looking at you like you suddenly grew a second head, because the cruel and wretched reality of that kind of magic was not so raw in anyone's mind. There had been no one like ours in the history of Valka, no context for exactly why it was as wretched a sin as it is considered today. But it was still a sin, I point out. A serious one. Well, I suppose this is the part that always blows the minds of the deeply religious, he answers, smirking playfully. Some of us think that you are wrong. Some of us believe that what you call sin is pointless oppression, baseless ramblings from old fools too caught up in their own traditions to look at the world with fresh eyes. And we are not mindless fools for doing so. There are good reasons that animancy is illegal, I insist. There are good reasons it shouldn't be, as well, he says, holding up a hand to stop me from protesting. I no longer believe what I did 25 years ago. The benefits are not worth the risks. That doesn't mean the benefits don't exist. As a young man I imagined skeletal horses in the streets, ferrying the public wherever they wished to go. I imagined undead laborers tilling the fields, replacing the repugnancy of slavery that infects the country with mindless, humane automatons. I imagined an army of rotting monsters pushing back the edges of the forest, fighting the oppression of verdantop without loss of human life. To me, they were dreams worth pursuing. And so when I stumbled upon an old tome that survived the purges and gathered myself some like-minded friends to learn that which we were banned from knowing, we did it with the burning fire of righteousness in our hearts. I frown, thinking about that. I can see it, I suppose. I don't know very much about necromancy, but it's my understanding that any soul will do, not just the souls of people. The problem is that learning to control dead animals gives you everything you need to know about controlling dead humans. It does sound like a wonderful dream, I admit. I wish there was a safe way to do it. His smile turns sad, and he nods at me. Exactly, he agrees. We thought we were heroes. And that is when everything started to go wrong. I'm sure you've heard the story before. Blah blah, greater good, blah blah power corrupts. It's no less true just because it's a cliché. It's so easy to justify evil in the heat of the moment, when it feels like you have no other option. The goal becomes such a perfect goodness in the mind's eye that it's blinding. You forget to ask yourself if the goal is worth what you've trampled along the way. He sips his tea some more, leaving me to chew on his words while I enjoy the scent. Power is kind of frightening, I eventually comment. I'm really glad I don't have very much. To my surprise, Jeremiah starts laughing, nearly choking on his tea. Quite an incongruous thing for a warden to say to her prisoner, isn't it? He asks, eyes twinkling with mirth. I chuckle a bit as well, embarrassed. Sorry, you're right. That was insensitive. My point was not to say it's insensitive, he corrects softly. My point was to say it's inaccurate. Be careful with that, jealous Avetta. If you fool yourself as to how much power you hold, you can do nothing but abuse it. I blink, feeling duly chided. But something about that feels off. I mean no offense, but if that's how you feel, I ask slowly, why do you remain here? You're powerful, aren't you? Shouldn't you use that power, or at least give it up? His smile grows especially wide, a subtle shift in his posture indicating to me that I've inadvertently touched on something important. Part of power is knowing who should be trusted with it, he answers coyly. The conversation shifts to less serious subject after that, but even as I leave his cell I find myself thinking on his last words. As an animancer, he can join the Inquisition or lose his ability to cast animancy. In the former case, his power works for the Templars. In the latter case, well, I suppose it's not unreasonable to think that if other Inquisitors can remove memories, they can probably keep them as well. Either way, his knowledge, whatever it is, ends up in Templar hands. And I suppose it makes sense that he doesn't particularly trust the organization that has kept him imprisoned all these years. But was he implying more than that? And if so, should I be looking into it? The only people that can really check the Inquisitors are other Inquisitors. It is part of my job to internally police the organization, but if the corruption is within Site 4, I wouldn't be able to tell anyone about it because I can't contact anyone outside Site 4. So what would be the point of looking? Okay, that's actually the exact line of thought that would enable corruption, isn't it? Now I've got myself worried. It's the worst possible time for doubts, too, since I'm about to check up on Vita for the first time today. I sigh in annoyance the moment I step through the second set of security doors, the familiar yet still overwhelming scent of piss and shit attacking my face immediately. Watcher, damn it, Vita, you said you didn't have to go last night, I grumble, setting down the soup I brought in the corner of the room so it's nowhere near her while I wipe her ass. Dick in a sock. I swear, leaping backwards. The thigh-eye tracks me with inhuman precision as the rest of Vita seems to groggily wake up. The three eyes on her face blink slowly, each out of sync with one another as her soul blearily looks around for a few short moments before all of them zero in on me at once. Oh, Vita mumbles. Hey, Jalissa. That wasn't there before, I insist, pointing at her disturbingly placed optical organ as I tried to get my breathing back under control. She glances down at her own thigh, quickly waking up and letting her features settle into a scowl. Ugh, she growls. No, it wasn't. I can't believe I'm growing more of these things. The eye twitches around in her leg as she practices moving it, sending an involuntary shudder of revulsion through my body. I approach anyway, still needing to finish cleaning her up. So, you didn't grow that on purpose then? I ask. So your body is just growing entire eyeballs on its own? Well, you've got me collared, Vita dismisses. It's not like I can cast spells on myself. With the supreme act of will I force myself not to react to that, but I know the effort is pointlessly wasted. It's Vita, obviously she's going to pick up on anything I feel. And maybe, I'm getting a false positive here. But for the first time since meeting her, I just got a clear impression that her words were a lie. Only after I finish my dirty cleaning work do I have the courage to look at her face. She's as blank as usual, giving no indication that she knows what I suspect. Still, I'm not sure what to do about it. Those terrifying words from her file ring through the back of my mind, demoted from Epsilon 3 to Epsilon 1 after lethal altercation with staff. How did a magic blocked little girl kill a trained Templar under Epsilon level security? Obviously, I asked that question as soon as I got out of her cell the first time. I did not at all like the answer. We don't know. You came here wanting to ask a different question, Vita reminds me. I blink, nodding in agreement as I finish fetching her a clean pair of pants. Then I grab the soup, quickly reheating it with thermomancy and spoon-feeding her to her clear delight. She's not wrong, I wanted to have one more conversation with her before I officially promote her to Epsilon 2. Although reminding me why she's in security level 1 in the first place is about the worst way to start that conversation. Yeah, I confirm. I want to talk to you about raising your permissions. She cackles, smiling like a mad dentist pulled her lips back for a tooth inspection. It makes her look far more in pain than it does happy, but all of her expressions are weird. She says she hasn't been emoting much over the years and it shows. The way she pulls her own face around without even using her muscles leads to all kinds of freakish, impossible expressions. I just have to accept that it's going to happen and pay attention to other cues on how she actually feels. You just want me to be able to use my arms so that I can piss without your help, she accuses. I would be lying if I did not admit that is part of my motivation, I tell her honestly. She cackles again. I let out a deep breath, setting the now empty soup bowl down beside me. I need you to tell me why you killed the Inquisitor before me, I say. Her expression goes back to blankness. Not how I killed him, she asks. Better Templars than I have tried to extract that answer and failed, I shrug. So no. Just why is enough for me. I want to know what would drive you to murder a person. Her body stays still, but I watch her spiritual tendrils twist furiously at the memory. A lot of things, I guess, Vita mutters. I feel like it's no more than most people, though. When I kill, it's to protect me or my family from being killed by someone else. So you're saying he was going to kill you? I ask, a bit confused. As an Epsilon class, we are very explicitly not allowed to kill her, and the guards outside would have certainly stopped any attempt. No, she says, tapping a small soul inside her belly with a tendril. It's small and black, floating snugly right above her own soul's core along with a slimy, bubbly soul with small tendrils of its own and a soul of solid water. He found something that would work. He found a way to remove them. My eyes open wide, drawing conclusions together. Now that makes sense. Hell, that's part of my job. But Vita believes that souls that go to the Mistwatcher are destroyed beyond repair. She, arrogantly, considers herself to be the only afterlife in the world. So she would believe a method to remove the souls inside her tantamount to a death threat against her family, friends, and hundreds of others. She's wrong. Horribly, tragically wrong. The poor girl is twisted and furious and confused, full of hate and bitterness, but she's not evil. She lashes out and hurts people because it's the only way she has to feel a semblance of control, because she has been abused and stepped on and only taught the lessons of strength versus strength. I have to believe that good will shine through if she's shown a little kindness and love. Okay then, I say, nodding. That's all I really needed to know. Then, to her surprise, I actually surprised her. I gently pull her away from the wall and start undoing the bindings that tie her arms behind her back. She'll still have to keep the finger restraints, but they won't be completely preventing movement. She should still be able to do most basic tasks with her hands. When I completely free her arms, I finally get to see that soul-filled snake that seemed to be running down her sleeve, a tentacle of pale flesh, growing out of her elbow. My breath catches. Eyeballs and tentacles. Seeing it in the physical, it's impossible to ignore the comparison. And she's not doing it on purpose? No, that's no. Well damn, I didn't think you would accept that answer, Vita mutters, breaking me from my thoughts. Time to enjoy learning to wipe my ass with mittens on, I guess. Yep, congratulations, I say, half joking but mostly honest. But that's not all. Oh, she blandly asks, shakily getting to her feet as she flexes her arms for the first time in almost 2 months. Yep, I confirm. I've got a surprise for you, but it'll have to wait until lunchtime. She huffs air from her nose, scowling slightly at her new, fleshy appendage as it writhes freely around. Well, consider me hungry, she says. I always do. The rest of the morning is rough, my shitty sleep and painful awakening tainting the long hours between dawn and the second meal of the day. But it's worth it, all of it is worth it for the moment I return. I re-enter Vita's cell with the plushie behind my back, unsure why the sender wanted it to reach her but hopeful that it will give her some comfort from home. She is still upright when I arrive, pacing around the room with an awkward gait, flinching as her sore muscles protest each and every movement. Jalissa, she grunts as greeting, still walking. I don't smell any food. Don't worry, I have food outside. I've got something else for you first, though. I reveal the stuffed bird from behind my back, holding it out to her carefully. Lazily, she glances my way, but as she sees what's in my hands her whole body halts, mouth hanging slightly open, paralyzed with surprise. Slowly, haltingly, as if it can't possibly be real, she stutters towards me, lifting the toy from my hands and staring at it with disbelief. Roscoe, she whispers. Tada. I cheer happily. Someone tried to send this to you over a year ago, but I finally got the request to ship it pushed through a little while ago. It just arrived on today's delivery. I'm not sure if Vita is even paying attention to me, however, her whole body shaking as she pulls the stuffed animal close to her chest and squeezes hard enough to flatten it, a startlingly normal smile ever so slightly starting to twitch on her lips. Then the shaking intensifies, her eyes water, and she starts to sob. The disturbing, inhuman monster is washed away by her tears, leaving only the vulnerable little girl underneath. A young woman, perhaps, barely 18 but still far too young to be expected to handle the challenges the Mistwatcher gave her. He's yours, I promise her, squatting down alongside her as she collapses to her knees. Not just when I'm here. He's squishy and safe and officially Epsilon Security approved. You brought him back, she blubbers, sucking in great hiccuping gasps between every breath. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome, I answer warmly, for once appreciating my ability to soak in her full-bodied joy with all of my senses. You want some food? She nods her head rapidly, too caught up in the throes of her tears to articulate an answer. I have the goofiest possible grin beaming under my helmet, but I suppose I'll be the only one to know about it. I turn and start walking out of the cell to go fetch her some lunch. Behind me, between her sobbing gasps of joy, she manages to whisper words with such gratitude, such honesty, that it chills me to my bones. I will never forget them, not in my waking hours or my nightmares. You get to live, she promises me. So then she claimed she killed Inquisitor Elliot because he discovered a working method to extract the souls from her body, and heavily implied she did so via spellcasting, despite the collar. I finish my verbal report to Warden Manus, a full 4 days after I penned and submitted a written report on exactly the same subject. His stern and withering glare is completely ineffective with my attention captured by the tapping and skittering at the back of his office cupboard. An oily, disturbingly sweet scent wafts around the room, filling me with the urge to vomit. And you're confident in this information? He presses. As confident as I reasonably can be, sir, I confirm. Which is quite good in your case, he mutters, and I'm a bit taken back by the unexpected compliment. If this is true, it's more information than we've gotten from the Epsilon since she got here. That said, while Inquisitor Elliot spent a lot of time trying to free those captured souls, he never once reported to me about a reliable method. Just theories, most of which failed and the rest of which were denied for violating Epsilon protocols. Which means they would have endangered Vita's life. Elliot sounds like such a charming fellow. I shouldn't think ill of the dead, though, and certainly not of someone I've never met. I will the thought away. There's also the question of how she could possibly cast with the collar on, I point out. Yes, he agrees. The collar enchantments are powerful in their simplicity. They detect mana entering a soul and give a warning zap for trace amounts, knocking the target unconscious for anything more than that. No mana in the soul, no casting. Could she be immune to the knockout effect? I wonder. Her file listed a lot of resistances to physical trauma. No, we tested that. She recovers faster than most, but she's not immune. Your manual collar activation should function just fine. I nod. There's an emergency rune on my armor which, when used, sends out a pulse of mana that activates every prisoner collar in a wide range, knocking them all unconscious. It works regardless of whether or not mana is being channeled by the prisoner, and is pretty much indiscriminate. If I were to hazard a hypothesis, perhaps something about the odd shape of her soul tricks the enchantment, Manus grunts. I don't know exactly how, but it's possible. I will get our metamancy team to look into it. I nod, not really having anything to add and admittedly still distracted by the wretched pattering sound of claws on wood, hard joints scraping and clicking with movement. In any case, excellent work, Inquisitor Jelisaveta. More guards will be stationed on the Epsilon floor until we get to the bottom of this. Brush up on your non-lethal takedowns and double down on magic resistance training. Dismissed. Understood, sir. That awful, patter-scratch noise breaks my focus again, and I sigh. Sorry, sir, can I actually see behind your cabinet for a second? Actually, do you have like, a bucket or something, sir? With a lid? Surprisingly, he does, so I collect every last one of the damn roaches, pulling them in with a simple kineticism spell whenever they skitter out of my reach. Just a few days, sir, I answer. Must have tagged along with something you brought in from the shipment. Disgusting, he grunts. Except in Vita's cell, now that I think about it. Taking them somewhere they won't stink up the place when they die, I tell him. Frankly, sir, I'd like to request official permission to smack anybody that squishes a roach somewhere public. These things are wretched. He chuckles, and so with live insects squirming around in a bucket I excuse myself from my superior's office and make my way to the beta security floor. Technically, I'm not even lying, the disposal method I'm thinking of won't smell at all. I'm heading to a beta 3 prisoner named Melissa, a young girl that could arguably place pretty high in a competition to decide the saddest and unluckiest history of our many unfortunate inmates. Melissa was the daughter of a successful potter who got paid a handsome sum by a noble that fancied his work to move to Skyhope. At the ripe age of 11, her whole family hitched a ride with a hunter-guarded trade caravan. Pretty standard stuff, really. It's about the safest way to travel unless you're lucky enough to have a contingent of Templars going the same direction you are. Without warning, a surge of predators smashed into the caravan and a group of scavengers cleaned up the rest. With the exception of Melissa, they all got slaughtered, and against all odds she managed to drag herself all the way down the rest of the road and make it to Skyhope. Melissa? It's Jelisaveta. Is it alright if I come in? I ask, knocking on the door. Ah. See, come in, she warbles. I let myself inside, the door shutting, locking, and watertight sealing behind me. My boots snap against the sticky ground, the sparse, humid room devoid of a bed or chairs at the prisoner's request. Instead it has a few dolls and other children's toys, carefully crafted from clay rather than wood or chitin. At the edge of the room a gelatinous glob of sky-colored liquid quickly reshapes itself into a humanoid form, trying and failing to put on wool-woven clothing without it sinking inside her form and dissolving into nothing. The corner of the room has piles of similar half-destroyed shirts and skirts, and Melissa whimpers as she inadvertently adds another to their ranks. Sorry. Sorry, I'm trying, I promise I'm trying, but I just. Hey. Hey, it's okay. I reassure her, stopping and holding up my hands in a placating gesture. You don't have to dress up just for little ol me. I should be able to, she whines. I know I can, it's just so hard. The golden ooze quivers with distress, finishing up the formation of fingers and the contours of a human girl's face. The trick behind her story is that it leaves out the part where the entirely talentless Melissa did not, arguably, survive the attack at all. By most definitions Melissa died, but was brought back to life when an animaverous ozoid failed to completely digest her soul. Depending on who you ask, Melissa either became an ozoid, or the ozoid just believes itself to be Melissa. Hey, I'm serious, don't worry about it. I insist. I'm not here to get you to practice anything. I got you a treat. A treat, she chirps, forgetting to maintain her legs and flowing quickly towards me. What kind of treat? A weird kind, I answer, grinning behind my helmet as she curiously blinks liquid facsimiles of eyelids over sightless, false eyes. That's suspicious, she accuses. You're being suspicious, Paris. My smile drops. I'm Jelisaveta, I remind her. Oh, she says, her form starting to lose shape for a second before snapping back. Oh, right. She's perpetually stuck at security level 3 despite how desperately and willingly she wants to help, because she can't learn. Even though her body seems capable of becoming impermeable, she can't hold herself that way long enough to not be a contact hazard to nearly every organic substance. And worst of all, sometimes she's just barely lucid enough to know it. What? Melissa shrieks, slipping backwards. Jelisaveta. That's not funny. I can't believe you got me bugs. I grimace. You mentioned once that you kind of miss eating those forest bugs, didn't you? I remind her hesitantly. No. I mean, kind of. I just ate them because I had to. It's okay to like eating weird things, you know, I tell her. No, it's not, she mumbles, turning her head away from me. I'm not supposed to touch that kind of stuff. I take a deep breath, letting it out slowly to psych myself up. Yeah, I know she's not. Try it, please. I press, holding it out to her. Oh, Watcher, this is so good. Melissa announces. This is really good. I have to quickly set the bucket on the floor as suddenly Melissa flows half her body into it, absorbing all the rest of the captured insects at once. It all absorbs into her, and as I feared, her soul looks undeniably healthier. Oh, that. Do you have any more? Melissa begs. Please tell me you have more. Of course, Melissa, I tell her anyway. I don't have any right now, but I can come back later with more if you keep this a secret, okay? She shrinks down a little, squishing in on herself. That's easy, she mumbles. Can't tell anyone something I don't remember, right? Well, someday you will remember, I say, as much of a prayer as a promise, so when you do, keep it between us, okay? Okay, Paris. When I open Vita's cell, I'm surprised to find her not only awake but doing push-ups. Her little stuffed crow is sitting on her back like an adorable training buddy. Shit, that's funny. I'm glad I could see this today. Hey, Jalissa, Vita grunts, a thin sheen of sweat coating her body. Hey, Vita, I greet back. Bread and stew day. Yup, she grins, collecting her stuffed animal with her elbow tentacle before hopping to her feet. Smells nostalgic. Oh. I ask, handing her the bowl and spoon. How so? She takes a deep breath, seeming to relish in the simple ability to feed herself even after having been doing it for half a tendy. They pretty much always served stew at the Hunters Guild, she explains, rapidly wolfing down multiple bites without spilling a single drop or dropping a single crumb. The third eye in her face and the eye of her soul point my way as her two normal eyes focus on the meal. Oh yeah, you used to be a hunter, I comment. She snorts. And eating other souls made your soul stronger, right? I ask without really thinking about it. Vita stops eating for a moment to flash me a horrible, all-too-knowing grin. That it does. I have to say, as a former orphan, it really does the body and mind a lot of good to stop starving all the time. Nothing is shittier than having to live entirely off of the kindness of strangers, Jalissa. Strangers can be very kind, I protest. They can be cruel, too, she counters. Not everyone is lucky enough to run into someone that will actually help. How long was she starving before you showed up? Of course she saw all that somehow. Of course. How much do you know about Melissa? I ask her. Is that the kid's name? Vita grunts, using the bread to clean the inside of the stew bowl before eating it. Bits and pieces. She's kind of like me, but mostly not really. Her problem, I think, is that she doesn't have a brain. Mistwatcher soul shards are designed to work with brains, they hook right up to and intertwine with part of the noggin after being put in a body. The soul requires the brain to grow, and the soul has to grow in order for her to grow. Unless the soul grows, the soul can't contain more stuff, and if the soul can't contain more stuff it can't hold, well, anything. Memories, skills, you name it. Take a soul out of the environment it's supposed to work in and it just doesn't work as well. In fact, it usually degrades over time. Go figure. So she needs some other way to get a bigger soul. I blink in surprise. I think that might be the most words I've ever heard Vita say in one sitting before. You're saying it will work, I summarize. I guarantee it, Vita confirms damningly. Honestly, I could fix that girl in a heartbeat. And not in like, a creepy way or whatever, but actually fix her. I've done it before on a Vrothizo victim. Huh? I ask. Oh, didn't you know? Vita asks, smirking again. Vrothizo eats souls too. It's kind of weird how the Mistwatcher teaches that souls are sacred and yet lets so many animivores run around, don't you think? Shit. Is she goading me? She doesn't feel like she's lying. Can you imagine how many Templars must have died with damaged souls? Vita continues. Or hell, I bet there are a bunch of Rothizo big enough to swallow someone whole. Not a single bit of soul undigested. No afterlife for them, I guess. There absolutely are Rothizo big enough to swallow people whole. I knew people that were swallowed whole. They know. Surely that just means lost or damaged souls can still reach the afterlife. I hedge. I stiffen a bit, startled at the outburst. Still. Is that a contradiction? Either soul damage affects a soul in the afterlife and the Mist Watcher allows that, or it doesn't, and that should extend to damage dealt by cognomancy and necromancy. Right? Or is that a false dichotomy? Is there some fundamental difference between removing part of the soul and altering it with a spell? Well, I guess it's nice that you actually feel conflicted about this, Vita grunts. It's a good point, I tell her. The problem is that I hardly know anything about animancy. I'll have to talk to some people. Preachers, better inquisitors, and maybe some other animancers, I suppose. Setting the now clean bowl aside, she moves her stuffed animal from tentacle to lap, her face blank but inner eye twitching with thought. I should probably get going, I manage after a while. Other people to check up on. See you at lunch? I gather her bowl and silverware, turning to leave, but Vita speaks up unexpectedly. No, she protests quickly. Sorry. Could you stay for a bit? Surprised, I give her a slow nod, staying put. She seems a bit on edge, but after another moment of silence she speaks up. Do you think I deserve to be here, Jalissa? The question takes me by surprise. In all honesty, I don't know if I ever thought about it before. I probably should have, I guess, but it's not really my place to make those judgments, I answer lamely. She scoffs. No, you don't know enough to understand the question, do you? She grumbles. You've read about it, but you've never seen what this place is, not really. Subtle hints learned over many years quickly put me on edge. Her muscles tense, her body prepares sweat in anticipation of action. I feel, all of a sudden, like I am in grave danger. It's as if I'm in the forest again, surrounded by greater predators. Right now, as we speak, 4 of your co-workers are torturing Capita, Vita growls. My brain halts at that, unable to form a coherent response. What? I ask dumbly. You heard me, she says. She hasn't broken yet, but at this rate she will. In more ways than one. But why? Holy shit. How does she know any of this? But I mean, if there are still people involved in the perception event at large, I guess we do need to. That's not. It is, she roars, jumping to her feet. This right here is look at me. I jolt in terror, peeling my gaze off her face and down to where she's pointing, the core of her soul. In one tendril is a black, anemic soul, not unlike Melissa's. She's not. She's really, actually not. Oh. Oh, no. The horrible smile of this 5-foot-tall girl somehow makes me feel so small. This is more than just a tantrum. My hand hovers over my collar activation rune, heart pounding as my senses sharpen in the face of death, pushing me to the brink. Do it, Jelly, Vita sneers. I'll show you what I showed him. Shit, 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 shit. I thought you said I get to live. I stall, desperately trying to think of a way to de-escalate. Oh, you do, Vita says with haunting sweetness. But only you. A vibration rocks through the facility, shaking from the first floor all the way down here to the bottom. An explosion? Doesn't matter. I don't hesitate, pouring mana into the collar activation rune. I feel a pulse, a chill, a loud cracking noise, then nothing. Vita takes a long, deep breath, drinking joyfully in my impotence. Release me, she orders. I scream as her grip tightens, jagged chunks of chitin stabbing into me as my faceplate shatters. There we go. I put all that work into remembering faces and you hardly ever show yours. Open. Dragging me to the door, I watch as Vita rips out a sliver of her own soul and shoves it in the locking mechanism, which then clicks ajar as commanded, pulled from the inside by a veritable skeleton key. Another locked door is immediately in front of her, and beyond it are 4 Templars waiting to attack and subdue her. They have no chance of winning. Don't kill them. I shout at her, blood dripping into my mouth. Their names are Sarah, Hal, Kenneth, and John. Kenneth supports his ex-wife and daughter back in Skyhope. How? Watched and did nothing, Vita hisses, 4 tentacles piercing through the wall and returning with 4 familiar souls. No, 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 no. This can't be happening. Another explosion rocks the upper floors as Vita's soul-holding tendrils reach up towards her wide-open mouth. Oh, watch her, no. She's about to eat them. Stop. I beg. Please, Vita. You're better than this. Aren't you? She narrows 3 of her eyes at me, stepping over to where I kneel helplessly on the ground and squatting in front of me. She drops the souls down her throat and I watch in horror as the people I knew dissolve away into nothing. 4 fully sized Templar souls dissolve within me, pulsing my body full of fresh power. Oh, yes. Yes. That's the good shit. In addition to Sky, my rescue crew seems to consist of Mateo and Netta, which is great, because I was kinda worried they would starve without me, and, as she once promised me, Lynn. Shit, I just want to run upstairs and hug her as soon as possible. She's here. She came for me. I love her so much I want to cry. But this? This is the chance I've been waiting for. With Sky to keep their heavy hitters busy, this is the best shot I will ever have at getting out of here. The vast majority of the Templars are upstairs trying to deal with the breach, so I'm free to wreak havoc down here until someone particularly nasty finishes running down 30 flights of stairs. And I'm pretty sure that's about to happen, so I figure I'll stack the deck as much as I can. There are a lot of Templars past the security door down the hall, as well as the strongest person in the prison. He's definitely some kind of cognomancer, but he's been here even longer than I have, so I figure whoever the guy is, he'll be happy to help me out. As I start to move, though, Jalissa calls out to me. Vita, wait, she blurts quickly. The closer stairwell is that way. Ah, she's trying to be manipulative. That's cute. Obviously, she just wants to keep me away from the other prisoner on this floor. She's not technically lying, though, so I forgive her. Plus, I have to admit I love her soul. A colorless, spherical vibration, smelling of fresh mulch and fruit. Like Penelope, her emotions seem to take the form of a song, starting as a discordant chaos whenever she wakes up in the morning but quickly progressing into complicated yet gorgeous symphonies. She also reminds me of Lynn, a warm heat to her that soothes just by looking at it. A lot of Templars can be nice, even are nice, at least for the first few months or so. What makes Jelisaveta special is that she's nice even to the people that freak her out, she's nice to the people she thinks are crazy and dangerous, and she's nice to the people that she thinks are wrong. And she's not just nice, she respects them. It's super weird. I don't really know how to handle being respected by things I haven't mind controlled. But out of every Templar here, I know she's the only one that deserves to live. I know, I tell her frankly. I just figured I'd go see why 9 different Templars are all trying to make sure the guy next door doesn't get out. And then, let him out. Vita, you can't, she begs. I gesture towards the corpses at my feet. Pretty sure I can. You shouldn't. Jelisaveta insists. Please. If you have any gratitude towards me, I would rather you kill me than go free that man. I frown. Well, if she puts it like that, I'm only going to get more curious. Fortunate for you that I'm not negotiating, then, I say, shrugging. You're coming with me, and I'm keeping you alive. That's not an offer, it's a statement. Vita, please, Jelisaveta whines as I walk over and grab her arm. That's Ars Rainier. You have no idea what he could do. Dragging a still protesting Jelisaveta, I walk over to the door separating the two halves of the bottom floor. I kick it down just to see if I can, and it blasts into the room, knocking down one of the guards in the hall. Immediately, I'm caught in a kinetic restrainment spell, magical energy surrounding my body and locking down my movement. All kinds of other spells start probing at my magic resistance, but I just dip into my internal well of mana, drawing on the channels I've been massaging wider ever since I got here to fill my body with my true self. My flesh is my domain, and with sovereignty established their spells shatter against my walls. Only the restraining spell continues to work, since it's locking down the area outside my body rather than trying to do something within it. Although that's also a pretty temporary state of affairs. Run, Jelisaveta chokes, as if it would save her comrades if they obeyed. We will die before we allow her to free the monster trapped here, one of the Templars spits furiously in response. Well, yeah, I agree. That does seem to be the likely order of events, doesn't it? A handful of them are already standing in my kill range. After all, I've grown it all the way up to 12 feet over the past 2 years. So I prepare 4 shards before quickly murdering, enslaving, and reanimating those in my range. They stagger, stunned and confused by what I just did to them as their allies cry out, the Inquisitors among them warning the others. Kill them, I order my revenants. One of the undead Templars collapses, curling into a ball and hyperventilating as she desperately fights against my order. The other 3 burst into action, 2 of them drawing blades and spinning around to swing at the 5 still living guards. The last screams in terror, protests and apologies echoing loudly off the walls as he nonetheless starts casting a deadly ice spell. To the credit of the Templars, they seem quite prepared for the problem of suddenly and unexpectedly needing to kill their own allies, which I'm tempted to use as evidence for their lack of virtue, but honestly it's just good sense. I can see in moments my revenants will lose, as they are both outnumbered and actively attempting to fight their orders, so I let a pulse of mana leave my skin, break the kineticism spell holding me in place, and stroll forward to kill the rest of the bastards myself, tentacles whipping mercilessly through them. Seconds later, the other 5 stand back up, the internal turmoil of being forced to reconsider all of their life choices raging inside each of their souls. Guard Jalissa, I order all of them. Don't let her die, and don't let her escape. You should be trained for that, right? Now then, the prisoner here. I mean, it won't really be hard to break him out since I can just open any lock I want. One of my revenants has the balls to speak up when I approach the door, though. V6. Miss Vita, he stutters. I don't think you should go in there. Don't let him out. He might hurt you. Well, at least this one isn't trying to trick me like Jalissa, but it doesn't change the fact that I need another heavy hitter to deal with the guards. I can't kill myself. Sky can only fight so many, and if anything can deal with the threats above, it's this guy. I'll be okay, I promise. The soul on the other side of this heavy security door is wild. He kind of seems like a splice, but instead of a bunch of soul fragments glued together, it's one fully intact soul with bits of others grafted on like pulsating tumors. Some of them are stuck on with the purple gunk that keeps Capita together, some of them are clamped like a vice, and some of them are fused partially through the core. The core itself is kind of nasty, a tar-like sump of leaching, sucking, flesh-textured darkness. Energy from the core flows through and around the body, outlining a deathly frail and thin figure. It seeps into the kaleidoscope of other souls grafted onto it, a smorgasbord of shapes and colors, half of which seem haphazardly sewn on while the others appear very purposefully positioned, like a carefully built doll with a dozen random extra pieces. Yet still, the soul beats with a warm strength, somehow comforting despite its monstrousness. If anything, it seems sad. Resigned to the trap he has been captured in, the nature of this prisoner's cell means he has no idea that in just a few seconds, freedom will be walking inside. I face the door, and open it. Facing away from the door, I exit. Back in the hallway where my revenants wait loyally in a circle around the one Templar I have deigned to keep alive, I try to decide on my next move. A powerful, high Templar level soul has just started descending down the stairs, so I need some way to wait. There's a powerful soul right behind me. A prisoner. I was just walking in to free him. What? I turn around, and to my surprise I find that both sets of high-security prison doors are already ajar, and inside. About to push the door to the stairwell open, I try to figure out a better plan than just having 9 relatively weak Templars, at least by Templar standards, which I admit are extremely high, rush the target descending to stop me. I feel like there was one right at the edge of my mind, but what could it be? I don't have any other assets. I need Sky to get here first, or I need, wait. There's a powerful soul right behind me. Why don't I just use that? Wait a minute, wasn't I literally just about to use that? I turn around, and... What's going on? I demand, tendrils writhing as I clench and unclench my fingers. We don't know, one of my revenants babbles. Whenever you look at AR. I'm in a new place again, but this time I expect it. That huge soul jumped down a bit, so I'm losing memories. Shit. It has to have something to do with the prisoner in that cell. We don't, Jalissa breathes, tears running down her face. Of course we don't. Then what's he doing? I snap. Nothing. There's no way he can cast anything, one of the revenants hisses. Vita did. Jelisaveta retorts. That's why you're all. Look, if he was casting on her, why would ours? Keep saying that name, I growl, staring intently at my own soul. What name? You mean ours? Let's try this again, I growl, and walk into ours cell. I thought my living conditions were bad, but even I'm surprised to see the security this man is under. Despite the doors to his cell being open, he seems no closer to being free than he was before. He is strapped to the wall, his entire body bound to be fully immobile. His feet don't even touch the ground, and no part of him is visible except for his eyes, which are a deep green. Everything else is bound tight. His collar has no lock, his jaw muzzle having never been designed to be removed. Unlike mine, the feeding tube is built in, remaining permanently stuffed down his throat so that the man can be easily kept alive against his will. He regards me with intense interest as I approach, though more than anything his eyes seem drawn to the stuffed bird I hold under one arm. Which is fair, I guess, because Roscoe is pretty awesome. As I get closer, purple threads of soul just like captors start seeping out of the cracks where the spirit gunk hides, and I tense immediately. Is he really going to try? To my surprise, however, they don't reach towards me. Instead, they loop and twist in the air, and to my irritation they force me to use a skill I don't even remember learning, reading cursive. Where did you get that toy? Toy. I don't have time for this bullshit. I grab the threads with a tendril and smash them to dust, slamming my hand through into the wall by his head hard enough to crack it. He can't answer and I don't need him to. As freakish as his soul is, I can still read it. He intends to help. He's excited, curious, proud. Whatever, doesn't matter. There's no duplicity. There's technically a risk that being an animancer lets him spoof what I read from his soul, but well, I can't trust his words either in that case, and I'm both desperate and out of time. I can't just order his bindings open since they don't, open, but that's fine. It's what brute force is for. Ignoring Jalissa's panicked protests, I grab the chunks of metal holding him to the wall and yank. Vita, ours chokes out like he's almost forgotten how. I almost didn't recognize you. Great, good for you, I snap. We're 20 seconds to contact, so get your ass up. The thin old man starts staggering to his feet, his soul supporting his atrophied muscles in the same way Remus and most of the Templars enhance their bodies for combat. Ugh, he's so tall. Everyone's taller than me, but this is ridiculous. It's tough to say for certain, but my guess is that ours is a bit under Galdra's age, around 50-some years old. If I'm wrong, he's probably younger than that. The dude looks like absolute shit and he probably has more wrinkles than a normal person from having so much more skin than muscle. I'm just saying, it's good you kept my gift, he continues, his deep voice sounding like he expects it to be buttery smooth but forgot that he's been dehydrated for at least a decade. I have no idea who you are, I grunt. 15 seconds. I what? He frowns, stretching his body. No, you should remember now. Are you ready to kill a man or not, you old bastard? He sighs. Sure, I suppose. There's no need to be rude lady. You wouldn't happen to have a spare soul, would you? Wonderful. I suppose I should probably do a few warm-ups before casting after so long. 5 seconds. I snap. Ah, well. Nothing for it, then. He takes a deep breath and then, to my surprise, starts singing is a strong term. Claretta casts magic by singing, but ours just makes a horrible, chaotic din. Deep-throated and powerful, his warbling shapes the mana in the place of his entirely missing fingers. I feel the Mistwatcher mana around me flowing into him, subtly lessening the pressure in the room as the soul I gave him starts spinning and the person that soul comprises suddenly wakes up. I'm so startled I almost jump backwards. I've never seen a soul be conscious unless it's controlling a corporeal body. Normally they just hang in stasis, be they floating in the air or safe inside my body. I don't marvel at it for long, however, because ours wretched music quickly reaches a peak and is joined by the horrible non-sound of the soul starting to scream. The High Templar doesn't just take it, immediately, strands of congealed mana burst from his armor, so absurdly dense in structure they're actually visible to the unaided eye. They look like globs of dehydrated piss forming a wriggling, living net, one that I know will spell the end for my escape plan if I make contact. I leap backwards, sending a wall of tentacles pumped with my own mana to meet it. My ability to draw and hold my own mana has drastically increased during my imprisonment after all. What else am I going to do with my time if not widen an infinitely long passageway? But a horrible screeching fills the room as I rapidly lose the mana battle anyway, the net gaining on me. The abominations ours made out of a person ignore the net, however, and soon they connect with the soul of the High Templar. They squirm right inside what should be an unassailable magic resistance, biting down on the core of the Templar's very being with toothless maws. Pain flares through the Templar, his talent faltering as more and more of the blasphemous, necromantic tubes attach themselves to him like leeches, chewing and screaming and squirming inside his soul. In seconds, they burrow inside, and the High Templar goes limp. Still standing, twitching slightly, his body and soul otherwise do not react. With a self-satisfied smile and a harsh, guttural syllable, ours puppets the man from the inside, forcing him to draw his sword. The Templar's body spins at once, then twice in a showy, parade-like flourish before swinging it upward and driving it deep through the center of his own skull. He collapses to the ground, dead, and the still screaming spirit leeches bring ours his soul. Absolutely fascinating talent on that man, ours hums appreciatively. Despite the abuse to his own throat, his voice somehow sounds a lot better. Certainly optimized for capture, ideal at a prison like this one. Unlucky for him he gave us so much time to prepare, Vita. I'd love to keep it but I'm not sure I have much use for it right now, ours muses. Would you like it? He holds the High Templar soul out to me, his spirit leeches detaching from it. Sure, I say, accepting it if for no other reason than to not leave it with him. I'm going to make sure to very, very thoroughly obliterate it before I even think about eating it, though. Excellent, he answers cheerily, handing it over. I must say, Vita, it is truly wonderful to see you again. Your body and soul are both coming along beautifully. Like I said, I have absolutely no idea who you are, I hiss. Yes, you did say that. One moment. He stares at me, at the real me, and a feeling of horrid violation shudders through my spine for a moment before it suddenly stops. You broke my puzzle box, he grumbles. You were supposed to solve it, not smash it. Who raised you to be this sort of brute? His face falls immediately, irritation evaporating. Oh, Vita, I'm sorry, I thought I prepared things for you better than that. You weren't on the streets, were you? I would not mind the title, Ars hums thoughtfully. Though I can hardly take credit for raising you, obviously, and we certainly have no biological relation anymore. But it just sounds so formal if you only refer to me as your creator, doesn't it? Wow. He's actually serious, isn't he? I can't help it, I start to chuckle. Look at you, I sneer. You're like a patchwork dolly that's been ripped apart and sewn back together so often you probably have spare dresses stored with your needle and thread. You're a powerful animancer, I'll give you that. But do you really expect me to believe that you made me? To my surprise, he chuckles right back. My, you've grown up quite feisty. I admit, an argument can be made that you are owed some credit for contributions to your own creation, but honestly, can you really be considered an artist if all you did was fill in the blanks? Come on, don't give me Capita riddle shit, I grumble. Oh, you know Capita. Is she here? Wonderful, I was hoping I could take her back. I narrow my eyes. He didn't bother to wait for an answer, so I assume he must be reading it from the souls of the Templars or from me. I can't say I like being on the other side of that trick. I'm getting wary. Not that I think he's hostile, per se. He even seems to like me. But I don't know. Sometimes he just looks at me the way Penelope looks at rats. I back away from him, towards my group of revenants. He ignores me for a few moments, seemingly lost in thought. But when he finally glances my way, his eyes slide past me and lock on Jelisaveta. Oh, you missed one, he comments nonchalantly, stepping forward with cognomancy thread screaming out of him. Jalissa quakes in terror, seemingly on the verge of blacking out but remaining firmly upright as her mind races for solutions. I step between them, glowering up at the far taller man. No, I didn't, I say firmly. You don't get to touch her. Now Vita, we can't just go leaving witnesses around willy-nilly, he answers, pausing but not backing off. I won't repeat myself, I warn him. We regard each other silently for a few tense moments, his horrible soleils floating dangerously closer. I snap out a dozen tentacles, grabbing and crushing them all just to shut them up. Ars raises his eyebrows, seeming impressed. Well, I suppose every girl likes to have a pet, he relents, shrugging. Just don't let her off the leash in public, I don't care what you think your relationship is to me, I respond flatly, but you don't get to order me around. Not about this, not about anything else. He sighs, waving me off dismissively. Fine, fine. Shall we get going, then? I glance around, trying to decide exactly that. Honestly, with the rest of the Templars busy upstairs, I should prepare however I can while I have the chance. I start systematically smashing the High Templar soul, grinding away anything that could possibly contain some kind of hidden animancy trap that I wouldn't know anything about before slurping it down bit by bit. In the meantime, I wander back into R's cell, dragging Jalissa behind me as I leave my revenants behind. I'm curious to see if Rs will try to do anything to them while I'm out of sight. I pick up one of the smaller metal bits, a fragment the size of a knuckle bone with now broken enchantments carved around the outside. It's captivating, in a way. Beautiful. I wonder if it can draw in my mana like it draws in the Mistwatchers. I don't really have any way to tell, since if I push mana outside my body it'll just get destroyed. What are you thinking about? Jalissa stutters. Respect where respect is due, she's absolutely terrified but is still trying to maintain a rapport with me. She's correctly judged that it's about all she can do right now, and it takes a kind of humility that I don't think I have to just own that. I am thinking, I say slowly, about eating this. She blinks. You, what? Why? Honestly, the more I think about it the more I want to do it, I admit. It's kind of making me hungry. What? An instinctive urge flows through me, vibrating down to my core. The black streak running through my soul from top to bottom, the one that acts as the pupil of my eye, starts to strain. I rotate my soul, looking upwards at the chunk of metal descending down my esophagus, watching my mana crowd into it, flowing through it as naturally as wind. The strain on my soul rapidly increases, like I'm pulling myself apart. That dark pupil stretches and breaks down the middle, a jagged crack rupturing like a fissure through the earth. My soul opens, revealing a voracious, toothy maw splitting my eye in half. Joyfully, I lap up the metal shard and swallow again. It evaporates in soothing fire as I pull it between worlds, using it to line the passageway between my great ocean of mana and my corporeal body. Immediately, I can feel myself flow more freely into the world. Whoa, I whisper, the pleasurable aftertaste tingling through my body. So that's why Misty grabs this stuff. What just happened? Jalissa asks quietly, her eyes wide. I wonder what it must have looked like to her imperfect soul sight. I don't answer her, of course, because I'm very busy devouring the rest of my new meal. What is that? Jalissa whispers as I drop another chunk of metal down through my soul. What are you doing? Partly to be coy but mostly because I'm curious, I ask her. What does it look like I'm doing? I don't know. When you eat that I can't believe you're eating metal, but when you do and I stare at your soul it almost looks like, for an instant, you're bigger than the room. Like I'm staring at something far larger and deeper than could be possible. Oh, cool, I say, grinning as I pop another bite-sized chunk down my throat. You can actually see me for a moment. What are you? She asks breathlessly. Come on, isn't it obvious by now? I ask her. If your Mistwatcher counts as a god, then that obviously makes me a goddess. I almost chuckle at the torrent of conflicting emotions that gives her, but unfortunately ours chooses this moment to walk up and ruin my fun. That's not inaccurate, he butts in, stepping back into the cell with us. Though obviously, there is a somewhat significant difference in scale. Hey, come on, I snap at him. She's going to be less likely to believe it if you back me up on it. I think you might be the only person I have ever felt jealous of at a hate. What? Ars scowls. Why, Inquisitor, we haven't even had a proper conversation. Have the values of the Templars truly fallen so far? Her whole body shaking, Jalissa still stares firmly right at the cognomancer and answers. You called me a pet, and you were about to soul rape me before Vita stopped you. He frowns, but after a brief delay nods his head in acknowledgement. I loathe to phrase it that way, but fair point, well made. Anyway, Vita, you realize we could have used all that metal, yes? I am using it, I protest. Eating it counts as using it. And I'll have you know it's delicious. Really? He hums curiously. Fascinating. Oh, I see your teeth have grown in. That's wonderful. I theorize that such a thing may occur at some point in your development. Was eating this metal the triggering event? He leans down, getting very uncomfortably close. I snarl at him and resist the urge to lash out with a fist, but I fail to do the same with a tentacle. To my surprise, however, the tentacle actually makes contact with his face and pushes him away. Whoa! I say excitedly, metal temporarily forgotten. I can touch you. I immediately start doing exactly that with numerous additional tentacles, poking and prodding him all over, which he primly pretends to ignore. Indeed, believe it or not, anima tangibility is a rather useful skill for animanc MRPH. I cut off his words by squishing his cheeks together, making his lips puff out like a fish. I giggle a little, smushing his face around until he finally gives in and steps away. Personal space, Arcee Warzy, I chide. I get the distinct impression that were I not his estranged sort of child I might have just earned myself a soul flame, but it's not often I'm on the beneficial side of favoritism, so I'd best take advantage of it. Besides, watching jealous Avetta and my revenants react with mind-numbing horror is just too funny to stop. Quite. Well, I'm sure you would be startled to learn I am not the slightest bit interested in remaining in this cell, and would like to request that we make our way to the exit. So if you could snack as you go. That's not startling at all, I protest, but yeah, sure. We've got a lot to do and a lot of stairs to climb. I gather up the rest of the metal for on-the-go snacking, ordering my revenants to walk ahead of us and the other half to walk behind as we finally enter the stairwell. It's a spiral column that rises far, far above us, and ours mood drops considerably as he cranes his neck to stare upwards at it all. Oh. HRM. That, really is a lot of stairs, ours sighs to himself. Well, you won't have to walk them all at once, I answer, rolling one of my eyes. We have a few stops to make on the way. Should we not escape as soon as possible, he protests. What? I smirk up at him, and leave all those witnesses around willy-nilly. Touché. All the Templars on the floor directly above us have already descended to guard ours, and are therefore my revenants, so I just order one of them to free all the prisoners on that floor and guide them to us. Same with the floor after that. From there on it's just one Templar a floor for a while, which is easy pickings. I turn most of them into snacks, handing out key rings to my slaves to go gather a menagerie of prisoners. The process takes a long time, as there are a lot more prisoners on every floor other than the bottom, so I don't actually see any as we continue making our way upstairs. By the fourth floor, ours is huffing and puffing like he just ran from one edge of the island to the other. I guess I shouldn't really blame him if he's been unable to exercise for a decade and a half, but it's still annoying. I do not feel. Ours wheezes, cut out for these exertions. Rather than answer him, I carefully reach over and wrap tendrils around his body, lifting him up over my head with them as he flails around a bit in surprise. Gee goodness, he yelps. This is somewhat undignified. I suppress a grin, mentally tallying myself a new record in the "how flabbergasted I can make Jalissa" game. A girl has to develop a few hobbies in prison, after all, or she goes crazy. You were the one bothering me to hurry things along, I remind him, popping my last chunk of metal down my throat. I look forward to the fact that I'm about to get a lot more when those prisoners catch up with us and I steal their collars. You should really be more respectful to your elders, Ars complains, letting himself hang in the air like the creepy doll he kind of is. I respect people if they deserve respect, I grunt back. It would go a long way, in my case, if you quit being so cryptic and started explaining what you know about me. Now, don't knock being cryptic until you try it out for a while, he disagrees. An amazingly large number of people think you're smarter than they are exclusively because they don't know what you're talking about. It's hilarious. Well, I just think it's annoying. Come on, spill. Bah. I'm not sure what there is to say. Your intuition has already figured out the most important piece. Use that brain of yours. I scowl, but answer anyway. Well, you said I was right when I claimed to be a goddess. So I'm probably directly descended from the Mistwatcher somehow. He laughs. No. On the contrary, Vita, you and you alone are the only person that isn't descended from the Mistwatcher. I stop walking halfway up a flight of stairs. What? Your pet here, your enslaved souls, everyone else you see before birth, the Mistwatcher gave them all fragments of its soul, fragments which are now inseparably part of who they are, Ars explains, slowly becoming more and more engaged as he speaks. They were born for the Mistwatcher and they will die for the Mistwatcher, but you, Vita, are something beyond that. I crafted your soul myself, at first as a tracing project to help myself understand the shape of God's true being, copying the essence of nature's greatest animancer. But unknowingly, what I made was an empty vessel. One that you, somehow, found and filled. I gave you your human body mostly to see what would happen, but you existed far before me. You are no child of the Mistwatcher. You are, I suspect, something more akin to its sibling. I digest that while I digest the last of my metal, not really sure what to do with that information. Ours doesn't feel like he's lying, but I'm not totally sure that means I can trust him. Ultimately, I suppose, my origins only matter insofar as they inform me about what I can do now. Jalissa, similarly, chews on that information with suspicion but not with outright rejection, which is surprising, as even most of my Templar revenants immediately dismiss R's words as malicious nonsense. What are you thinking, Jalissa? I ask curiously. She chews on her lip a bit, picking out tiny shards of chitin from her face that ended up stabbing her when I smashed her helmet. How did you cast with the collar on? She asks back. On one hand, giving her information might not be smart, but on the other hand she's curious for reasons beyond the security concerns, so I decide to indulge her. I don't use the Mistwatcher's mana, I explain. I have my own internal pool of it that I draw out from somewhere else. It's mana, but it's a different kind of mana, I guess, so standard detection spells don't recognize it. Again, she's quiet for a bit as she thinks, the gears in her head turning just a bit further towards blasphemy. I see, she eventually says. You're not thinking of starting a cult about me, are you? I joke. Of course not, she answers firmly. You're a murderer and a mindraper. The answer startles me, along with the hurtful spike of raw disgust that accompanies it. I find myself unable to form a response. We continue ascending the stairs, en route to the first and most important stop on our journey, as I chew on her words. I feel the need to answer before we get to our destination. Michael screamed in protest as you made him try to murder his friends, Jalissa responds, her eyes distant. You tortured them. They tortured me first. So what? She shouts, surprising me again. You didn't have to do it back. I thought you were better than that. My tendrils curl in irritation, causing ours to wriggle as I squeeze him a bit harder on accident. If she was the one that had been locked up and tortured for 2 years, I bet she wouldn't be spouting this shit. I don't have the luxury of being nice all the time, Jalissa, I growl. The world doesn't work like that. It's not about how the world works, she says quietly. It's about integrity. What's the point of anything if you're not at least better than the people you hate? Superiority is relative, my dears, ours butts in before I can respond, stumbling a bit as I set him down on the floor we finally just reached. Well, I want no part of whatever you use to judge it, then, Jalissa snaps back, though the animancer's responding frown causes her to flinch in terror. I don't know how to continue that conversation, or if I even should, but it doesn't matter anymore. We made it. I open the door to the floor of this awful, terrible prison where my mother is currently rushing around, looking for me. Mom! I greet her, arms outstretched for a hug. I feel the instinct of recognition, and though she has no time to sheath her weapons, she has plenty of time to outstretch her arms in return and tackle into me, wrapping me up in a whole-body hug as I stagger backwards from the impact. Her soul is the same beautifully warm gold as always, but I'm not sure I'd have been able to tell it was her if I was limited to normal senses. No hint of her normally messy red hair is visible underneath a black balaclava, which covers her nose and mouth to only leave her eyes visible. I'm slightly taller than I used to be, and it startles me, the feel of the hug different from both that and the surprisingly alien feeling muscles rippling under her arms. Nah, I got myself out. He's a pretty great distraction, though. The faraway sound of an explosion punctuates my point. Ha! You're still my little ruffian. Lynn says, her eyes starting to get wet. I'm so glad you're safe. Let's get you out of here, yeah. That sounds awesome, I agree. But, can I ask, did you and Sky have any, financial backing? It's not like I expected Penelope to break me out herself. She probably has some scheme or another that makes it better for her to send other people to do it, but I can't help but be a little bothered by her conspicuous absence. Lynn just ruffles my hair, though, flashing me one of her usual grins. Honey, she never stopped looking for you for a second. Sorry it took us this long to get here. I grin back. Now I feel bad for doubting her. It's okay, Mom, I tell her. You're here now. I'm here now, she agrees. But well, look at you. You must have grown 2 more inches. And also an, eyeball. Yeah, I grow eyeballs now. Neat. So who are your friends here? Are they all dead, or? No, just the ones with helmets. This is Inquisitor Jelisaveta. She didn't torture me, and I thought that was nice of her. And this is First Lord and former High Inquisitor Ars Rainier, Madam, Ars says, bowing lightly and holding out a fingerless hand to shake. Charmed, I'm sure. Lynn does not accept the hand, instead staring at it wide-eyed like it's an entire island about to fall on top of her head. Oh. She answers, with significantly more volume than necessary. Okay. This is your one and only warning, Ars, I tell him frankly. If you so much as look at my mom in a way I don't like, I will kill you. I thought you said you were an orphan, he answers, idly ignoring my death threat as he retracts his hand. I mean yeah, but I got adopted a few years ago, kinda, I say. Honestly, I just like calling her mom because it makes her feel old. Vita, can we have like a private mother-daughter talk for a second? Lynn squeaks. I shrug and quickly cast a silence spell around us. What's up? I ask her. I mean, I agree, I answer, shrugging. But I just learned he might actually be my air quotes real dad, in at least some weird wibbly way, and more importantly I need his help to kill a couple more High Templars. We can ditch him after that. Alright, well on that note, our escape plan is Capita. Sky freed her and got her halves back together, but she's in bad shape. We should regroup with them as fast as possible and get out of here. I was sort of hoping to kill the rest of the Templars before we go, I complain. Lynn seems surprised at that. I don't know why. I didn't exactly have a fun time here, Mom, I clarify. Right, well, I don't think we have time for that. So let's get going, alright? I nod and dismiss the silence spell. Okay, our ticket out of here is 8 floors up, and she's under attack, I announce. Let's move. Watcher's eyes, more stairs, Ars sighs. I smirk and start leading the way. Ars declines getting another tentacle ride, so he huffs and puffs laboriously all the way up to the floor where a furious battle currently rages. Revenants, keep Jalissa away from the fight and don't let her interfere, I order, booting down the door. Before us is quite the chaotic battle site. In the middle of the hallway, facing away from us, an Inquisitor captain and a powerful Templar that I'm surprised to find doesn't have High Templar armor stand among the perforated corpses of dozens of other Templars as Sky, on the far end of the hall, tears open more of the floor, walls, and ceiling to blast it towards them. The Inquisitor captain, I immediately note, is actually a splice, a cylindrical column of thrumming, rock-hard soul impales an otherwise spherical, apparently talentless base soul. He and Sky are locked in a dangerous, long-range dance with each other where Sky constantly pesters him with stones which are blocked with invisible forces that seem to be projected from the captain's hands. Meanwhile, the other powerful soul defends by freezing giant blocks of air solid, blocking the larger attacks with ease, though the structures rapidly sublimate after being created. Still, the whole hallway is terribly frigid, and doubtlessly as the ambient temperature drops, the Templar's talent will become easier and easier to use. Behind Sky, both Capita bodies rest, one bloody and kneeling on the floor where her other half hugs her around the shoulders. She looks up when I kick down the door, at first hope and joy filling her face before she spots ours, wherein all of it immediately vanishes, instantly replaced with nothing but terror. Before I can so much as get a word out, she grabs Sky and both of them vanish. Capita, our ticket out, is no longer in my sensory range, and the two super-powerful souls both turn to face us instead. Did Capita just run away from me? Ars grumbles indignantly. What an ungrateful little brat. I'm significantly more worried about the two Templars in front of us, I tell him. I never intended to teleport out anyway. I don't really want to get close to either of those talents. Any ideas? Ars, the Inquisitor Captain roars. Damn it. You are not leaving. You are never leaving. Ars scowls and I step in front of him as streams of mana try to crush and restrain us. I let my own burst forth from my body, surprised at the ease with which it flows, and obliterate the spell. Manus, Ars greets him back, seemingly unperturbed. I do hope we can work together again soon. I suppose I will have to deal with this situation. Miss Lin, would you mind lending me your knife? Lin sends a questioning glance my way, and I shrug, busy focusing on nullifying Manus' kineticism talent. She flips her knife around and catches it by the blade, holding it out to Ars hilt first. Perfect, thank you, he says, clamping it between two fingerless palms. This is where I depart, then. Do come visit me when you get out, won't you, Vita? Huh? I say, confused. Then my mind catches up with the words. Wait, help me kill these guys. No thank you. I've little reason to stay. Our teleporter is gone, after all, and there's certainly no way I'm going to walk up the rest of those stairs. Then, giving me a polite nod goodbye, he swings the blade upwards and stabs himself through the eye. His body collapses immediately, but somehow he's not dead. He doesn't feel dead. He rises from his body, wretched mockery of a soul fully conscious despite being unanchored to flesh. Then it shoots upwards like an arrow, unaffected by pedestrian things like gravity and mass as he leaves Lin and I to face the Templars alone. Wow, Ars is kind of a dick. Still, the whole emergency soul ejection thing is pretty cool. I wonder where it's going. Wait, is this why all the Templars have been ardently against killing me despite how much they hate me? Do they think I can do that? Can I do that? No, not really, I admit. The pressure of mana around me eases up. Interesting. Does this mean he wants to talk? Sure, we can talk. I've talked with a lot of Templars now, and I'm getting pretty good at it. I focus the eye of my soul on him, drinking in every minute fluctuation of his being that betrays his emotions and hints at his thoughts. I've always struggled to get people to see things how others do. Even after I could read emotions directly, I still never figured out the trick to making use of that information beyond lie detection until Penelope gave me some advice. I haven't exactly had anything better to do in prison than build up all the skills I can, and this one can be pretty entertaining. When learning emotions, she said, it isn't enough only to try and figure out why someone feels the way they do. If you do that, you can make guesses but not figure out if those guesses are right or not. The trick is to also use that guess, dissect it, and figure out how to get this person to feel whatever you want them to feel. If you can successfully manipulate someone, you know for a fact that you understand them. Manus is terrified, first and foremost. That wasn't the case until Ars escaped, so I'm going to guess he's scared of the guy. Manus is furious, mostly at himself and again probably for letting Ars get away. He's confused, because he doesn't understand how we got out. From his perspective, the attacking forces got delayed here, no one should have made it to the lower levels. He doesn't know how Lin slipped by him, and my guess is that he thinks she freed me, which wouldn't be possible unless she can kill 5 Templars by herself. So he's probably overestimating her right now, and an extra flash of concern when he glances her way confirms that for me. I'm not sure I want to send Lin on a bluff she can't afford to get called, though. It's kind of funny, really, I continue. You're so worked up about some cognomancer escaping when you've been free this entire time. Does the sketch just miss having his artist around? His eyes narrow, jaw clenching. Oh, whoops. That really pissed him off, actually. Okay, maybe we'll go with anger after all. I let mana flow through my tentacles, twisting them around and shaping it into a subtle kinemancy spell to send Lynn a message only she can hear. Who needs fingers, anyway? Mom nods, stepping back towards the staircase as I stride slowly forward, watching both Templars carefully. Manus mostly doesn't give a shit, content to let me approach, while the ice user actively tries not to react because he, of course, wants me to be closer. He probably won't butt in until I get in his attack range, which is what I want. What did you just call me? Manus hisses. And here I thought you didn't remember. I don't remember ours, no, I tell him. But I've met Splices. I know what you are. And I know you have two talents, that kineticism bullshit, and cognomancy. Cognomancy that you regularly use on your own Templars, because you are an abusive, power-hungry hypocrite. I only cast to the degree necessary to ensure my people are not being tampered with by the likes of you, Manus snaps. Animancy is needed to combat animancy. Ooh, that one hit home, and not just in Manus. Jalissa and the ice guy are reacting to that. Interesting. I will not discuss prison security policies with a prisoner, Manus snaps. Return to your cell before this gets ugly. Ha, like that would help. My cell is a bit busted. Still, no value in pointing that out. He's changing the subject on purpose, so I should call him out on that. That's not a denial, I say. You hate your creator, but you're still his creation in the end. You know nothing, Manus growls. And honestly, I don't blame him. Because it's both. Manus' talent wants to be used, same as anyone, and he's using it in the best way he can while keeping that urge down. Is it a bit aggressive? Sure. Is it ridiculously intrusive? Oh yeah, absolutely. Would it actually catch any cognomancy performed on his Templars and allow him to protect them from it? Yeah, probably. Honestly, in his position, I might do the same thing. He's not really wrong. And ours gave me an idea. It's obvious, now that I think about it. Souls can move. I don't understand how ours made souls that fly through the air under their own power, but they can certainly move. Why should my shards need a vessel in order to function? Why should they need blood in order to drink the soul? It's kind of an arbitrary limiter, isn't it? My power seems to sing at the question. The understanding at the edges of my awareness churning into my conscious mind. Yeah, this will work. I twist the hungering shards further, and throw them at my enemies like weighted daggers. I don't exactly have a lot of experience throwing things with my tentacles, so most of my shots are off course. Manus sees the attack thanks to his soul sight and dodges all but one of my shards, while his fellow Templar is not an Inquisitor and gets hit by 3 of my attacks. I immediately get an answer to my blood question. When my shards make contact with my enemies' souls and start gnawing at them, they don't really make much progress. I guess if I rip flesh out of someone I can bring bits of soul along without having to deal with magic resistance, but if it's just soul versus soul then magic resistance comes into play. Ours didn't seem to have that trouble, but maybe he was just that strong. Still, this seems handy. Magic resistance may be stopping my shards from dealing damage, but they aren't getting rid of the shards either. My attacks will keep trying to break through until something deals with them, and that's dangerous enough to force Manus to take his attention off me in order to do exactly that. A plan in my head starts to form. I can throw souls, huh? In that case, instead of trying to approach these two, I bet I can make them come to me. I feint a rapid movement forward, prompting Ice Guy to freeze a wall in front of me and obscure their vision of my position before I leap backwards, turning around and retreating back to the stairwell with Lynn and the others. The living and dead Templars are still on the landing for this floor, but Mom is already long gone, having run back down the stairs. Carved from stone, the spiral stairwell has no central column, only empty space, allowing one to look all the way up or down the construction or, if they're particularly suicidal, jump all the way down. We are currently 14 floors from the bottom, which is about 200 feet. 2 years ago, I cracked both my legs after falling 20. Fight on the stairs. I order my revenants. Go halfway to the next floor and stall for time. Keep their attention. Then I grab a terrified Jalissa, vault over the handrail, and jump down the middle of the stairwell. Jalissa screams as we fall about 5 stories, but I hold her head steady as I try to catch myself on a banister. It breaks, and I have to flail to grab the stairs underneath it to halt my fall completely. 2 of my revenants, the ones that had been on the lower floors freeing and collecting prisoners, immediately rush to my aid, worriedly helping me pull myself and Jalissa up onto firm ground. Thanks, I grunt to them as we crawl to our feet, and then I kill them both. I'll deal with you in a second, I promise her. I've still got a warden to kill. Who wants to help? A deluge of affirmation hits me in response, but I ignore the voices and pay attention to the souls. Most of the really eager ones seem a little bit unreliable. This is a prison, after all, so a bunch of people in here are the bad kind of crazy. The souls I'm interested in seem firmly against helping as well, which is no, wait. I step over to the splice, grab her collar, and snap it, which makes the rest of the prisoners even more rowdy. You can help, I tell the splice. Make sure Jalissa and Vicky don't do anything stupid. Lynn, you too. I don't want to help. Why you? The splice stutters at me, her whole body shaking. I roll an eye, popping the first chunk of collar metal down my throat. Then switch to the one that does. Nix, don't. Victoria begs. You don't have to listen to her. The splice freezes, panic on her face as she fights herself from within. With 2 tentacles I grab the parts of her I don't need, applying a gentle yet threatening pressure. Revulsion and terror fills them, but they can deal with it. I don't exactly have the time to argue right now. With another squeeze they concede the fight, and the woman stands up straighter, grinning a smile of twisted teeth. You remember us, work of art, she says happily, any trace of a stutter gone. Nope, I deny. I have no idea who you are. We can talk later. Manus finally finished pulling my fragments out of himself and Ice Guy, so they make their way to the stairs. As expected, they immediately start kicking the asses of my revenants up there. In the first second of the fight Manus just telekinetically pushes half of them over the banister, where they proceed to fall to their deaths. It was really quite thoughtful of him, since it lets me catch their souls before their bodies splatter on the ground below and shatter them into an inedible state. I just reach out a few tentacles and rip the souls out as the corpses fall, not impeding their descent in the slightest. They, too, get pushed full of mana. Meanwhile, the remaining few Templar revenants put up a rather pathetic fight, failing to do any damage to the more powerful duo as they chase my forces down the stairs. Which is perfect, really. All I need is for Manus to not pay much attention to the stairs themselves. Stone is a pretty tough material, after all, but so is wood by most measures. A small fragment of my soul can shatter branches with relative ease. A collection of Templar souls, therefore, should have little trouble ripping apart carved stone from the inside. Get out of the stairwell and into the hallway, I tell the living. Leaning out over the half-broken banister to better aim, I toss 1 mana-charged Templar soul into each floor's worth of winding stairwell between myself and Manus. They worm into the stone, threads blooming in every direction as my power fills the building itself. Break them all, I order. Cracks run through the rock, snaking jagged lines as they widen and bloom and finally explode, less than a second after my words leave my mouth. The floor beneath the Templars crumbles, dropping them into the gaping death pit below. Manus and Ice Guy, of course, immediately react by trying to use their talents. Kineticism can easily hold Manus in the air, and a block of ice can be a temporary, if uncomfortable platform. This is, in their minds, hardly a threat they aren't prepared for. But when the staircases shatter, so too do the souls within, releasing their massive payloads of blue. The warden and his fellow Templar fall, their talents unusable in what is, for barely a second, my domain. But then the staircase below shatters, and the next as the pair accelerate down the shaft. I gather and push my disembodied self through the air, coating Manus and his lackey in mana I will not let them use. The Templar souls in the staircase are irrevocably shattered, worthless for even a meal, but in their place I get 2 souls of far greater strength. Much like the corpse's Manus himself pushed off the edge, I collect his soul as he falls past me, tearing it free of his body before he can pull the tiniest shred of Mistwatcher mana back into himself. His partner meets the same fate. And now the prison is devoid of threats that can stop me. There's nothing left to do but clean up. I allow myself to let out a satisfied sigh. Someone go down and collect the bodies on the bottom floor. Bring the 2 most intact ones up to me. Watchers sag at tits, what security did they put her under, another goon mutters. Epsilon, I answer. There's an Epsilon. I just give an amused snort in response, turning towards where the Splice is standing arm in arm with Jalissa and Vicky, grinning maliciously. I have no clue what this Splice's talents are, but the Inquisitors are more than terrified enough of it for me to be content that they won't start shit. Right then, I ask Victoria. Now what should I do with you? You shouldn't do anything with her, Vita, Jalissa insists. You won. No one else has to die. Oh, so you're saying I should take her prisoner then, I sneer. Well, okay. She did teach me a lot on how to take care of a prisoner. I shove the shard into the collar of that auburn-souled old man and order it open as I walk his way. He jolts in surprise when it clicks unlocked, and I pull it off of him before returning to Victoria. I walk right up next to her, glaring up into her damn chitin helmet. On your knees, I order her. She flinches, but fails to comply. Are you going to make me repeat myself? I ask calmly. Slowly, shakingly, she kneels in front of me. I rip her helmet off, snapping the straps, and click the prisoner collar into place. Now then, I sneer happily, raising a fist. Time for interrogation. Jalissa, terror thumping through her soul, nonetheless breaks out of the Splice's casual hold and grabs my bicep. I stopped her, so I'll stop you too, she says firmly. You only stopped her after letting her get a few hits in, I remind her. Well, I'm better than I was then, she counters. You can be better than her. I almost break free and start beating the shit out of Victoria anyway, but to my surprise, Lynn also steps in. I blink. What? I just mean it's like gah. I don't know, Rowan is better at this than I am. It's stupid. It's cowardly. What's the point? I'm honestly surprised Lynn is uncomfortable with this. This is just how it's done. Someone steals your food. Bullies you out of a good begging spot. Touches your Roscoe. Well, now you have to kick the shit out of them or else they'll do it again. But I haven't seen my mom in 2 years, so the thought of disappointing her now for whatever reason is enough to make me reconsider my promise to kill every Templar here. I hate breaking promises, but, well, I guess I never said when I would kill everybody here. Thank you for being merciful to her, work of art, the Splice hums, 2/3 of her still brimming with feelings of violation. We understand she was not good to you, but she was to us. Well, I guess now is as good a time as any. Who are you? I ask her. I am Excorio. We are Altrix. Sano and Nyx are my other shards. We are saddened that you do not remember us, Vita. Did your changes damage your memory? I scowl. A rather powerful cognomancer recently implied I lost some of mine, yeah, but I assume that was his fault. Or you're just bullshitting me. Ah. We see. Well, we are all happy to see you again. We helped raise you before our capture. You are like I suppose a daughter, to us. What was that pause for? She was about to say something else by habit, and is relieved to have caught it. It doesn't feel like an omission at my expense, though. She just feels embarrassed about it. Well, I don't know you and my mom is right here, so I'm afraid I can't reciprocate, I grunt. But I certainly don't have anything against you either. Feel free to tag along, or whatever. We shall, she agrees, bowing slightly. I can feel she's hurt by my words, but I don't really want to deal with it. The rest of me will also cause no problems, so long as you cause no harm to our favorite inquisitor. I glance at jealous Iveta and snort. Well, I guess if I'm entitled to one, maybe you are too. As long as your favorite inquisitor plays along. Her bow becomes deeper for a moment, and then she stands back up straight. I guess that's the end of that conversation. So your name is Vita, then, the middle-aged man whose collar I took asks from behind me. That's me, I confirm, turning to face him a few moments before remembering to turn and face him with my physical face as well. It's good to meet you. I am Jeremiah. May I ask why you removed my collar, Vita? I like the smell of your soul, I tell him honestly. There's a pause. Nobody seems to like that answer for some reason. I don't mean that in like a, I want to eat it, way, I clarify. At least not any more than usual. That reassures him even less. I've been getting good practice on freaking people out and pissing people off, but the opposite still seems to elude me. Whatever, what would be the point of manipulating someone into feeling better anyway? Manipulating people has to be reserved for the extra special assholes, or I would socially exhaust myself after like 2 conversations. Anyway, nice to meet you, Jeremiah. The rest of you can line up and I'll start snapping collars. Then we're going to the upper floors. I hate every reason why this is the case, but some part of me does appreciate that this prison got its prisoners good at following orders. My earlier murder probably helped, and I can hardly regret it considering that prisoner had been thinking rather vividly about murdering me and, if I was interpreting his disgusting slew of emotions properly, animating and having sex with my mind-controlled corpse. Considering how shitty the Templars are, it can be easy to forget that a significant chunk of their prisoners are admittedly much worse. Accordingly, I ask everyone 2 simple questions before removing their collars. Do you intend to hurt me or anyone I care about? No, the greasy-looking older woman in front of me confirms. She's not lying, which is good because those that do lie, and those that say yes, will get eaten. Are you willing to obey me as long as we are together? Until we get out of this damn prison, sure, she answers. But then I'm going my own way. I nod. That's fine by me. I open her collar, tear off a chunk of it to swallow, and call the next person down the line. Do you intend to hurt me or anyone I care about? Shit, no, I'm not stupid. Are you willing to obey me as long as we are together? By the end of the line I have an interesting collection of Gamma and Delta prisoners. 8 of them survive and get their collars popped, 10 of them I deem dangerously unstable and turn into meals, and 3 of them aren't really crazy or evil but they certainly think I am, so I regretfully decided to leave their collars on and see if they mellow out. Manus and Ice Guy are also now my revenants, placed in relatively fresh bodies, though I've ordered them both not to talk. May I just protest your general policy of releasing large numbers of animancers back into the public? Jealous Iveta mutters. She doesn't expect me to care but feels like she has to say it. Various noises of acknowledgement echo behind me. See? It'll be fine. All the places other than the capital. Jalissa demands. You're just going to let them cast as much animancy as they please. Well, I don't know what else you expect me to do with them, I grumble. My skills are murder and unmurder, and I've doled out what I consider reasonable amounts of both already. Look, most of the living ones aren't going to be doing anything stupid. No one wants to just get caught again and end up back in a place like this. Wait, you intend to go back to the capital? One of the prisoners asks. That's crazy. There are going to be inquisitors swarming everywhere when they know we all got out. You'll get caught in minutes. I can't just not go see the rest of my family, I insist. And I can't just not go see Penelope, but I don't intend to say her name out loud in front of witnesses. She'd be so mad. We could always go to you, Lynn says. Or you could hide somewhere in the forest and we could meet in the middle. I'll think about it, I grunt. It's a long walk home, after all. After dealing with all of the defenses, it turns out a prison break gets pretty boring. The bottom 13 or so floors held all of the truly dangerous prisoners' animancers, splices, and instant death talents, mainly. I am, modesty aside, a superlative example of all three, and so my dominance is established quite easily. Well, I guess I'm not technically a splice, but the familiarity and awe I get from that crowd seems to give the prisoners the impression that I'm part of the Ars conglomerate. Maybe they're right. It seems more and more likely that the guy wasn't bullshitting me, but I'm still not really sure what that means. He said something about making an empty vessel and then me filling it. It goes without saying I have no memory of anything even remotely like that. As far as I know, I have always been Vida, the starving girl from the streets with nothing but a Roscoe to my name. But the more I think about it, the more I start to worry about the fact that I can't really remember anything from before I was about 6 years old. That's normal though, isn't it? People don't have memories from their early life. This is, to my knowledge, the only Hiverock soldier that we've captured and kept alive, she answers me stiffly. I can see that much, but for some reason it's still a shock. I spent a good bit of my time as a hunter going after Hiverock monsters, also known as Rothizo, so it's somewhat easy for me to forget that for most of Valka's history, that is not at all what people thought of when someone said, an attack from Hiverock. That first night the Rothizo eggs fell, we did not expect it. What we expected stands in the cell in front of me, and to most people it's no less frightening. 2 legs, 4 arms. A humanoid body shape. No face. The Hiverock soldier is thin and dangerous, without a hint of fat or other soft spots on a body encased completely in brown chitin. I mean it, this guy is so flat and smooth you could use him as a writing desk. He doesn't even have a butt. There's only the subtle curve of his armored hide, like a man wearing full plate that he can't take off. Although the helmet is a little more complicated than ours. His head is human-shaped at its most basic level, but he has no hair, no nose, and no apparent mouth. Only 2 large, black eyes that bulge slightly out of his head, and a series of subtle seams in the area below his eyes that hint at the fact that there is certainly a mouth somewhere, and we absolutely do not want to see it open. No, what really weirds me out is that Hiverock soldiers are mindless bogeymen, bad men from the sky that drop 4 times a year for no purpose other than to kill every man, woman, and child they can point their weapons at. And yet I made sure to go to this cell as soon as I could because he has possibly the most beautiful soul I have ever seen. Human souls are just kinda ball-shaped, usually. There are exceptions, and that's what I initially thought this was, but I suppose it's something beyond human entirely. This is like a flower blooming in every direction simultaneously. The nested complexity of a rose, extrapolated and expanded into a sphere. It is as much sculpture as it is soul, dazzling and artistic in ways I've never seen in anima before. But the beauty does not extend just to the superficial. This is not some mindless drone of an insect in front of me, this is a full and complete person. And, I suspect, an extremely intelligent one. Can he talk? I asked Jalissa. I wasn't assigned to him, so I've read his file once and that's it. But as far as I'm aware he doesn't understand us. Let's kill him, then, I say in exactly the same tone as before. Yeah, he's bullshitting you, I tell Jalissa, cutting off her indignant demands that I don't kill the person I never had any intention of killing in the first place. I turn to him. You can understand us, can't you? Again, he makes no outward acknowledgement, but I can see it in his soul. He absolutely understands every word. Very, very interesting. Honestly, it's pathetic that a bunch of animancers had him imprisoned this whole time and never managed to figure this out. The rules have changed, I warn him. You're a good actor, but acting doesn't work on me. At the same time, I am not an inquisitor, and I am not your jailer. Drop the bullshit and show that you are willing to play nice, and I'll let you walk out of here alone if you want. He doubts that. He thinks this is an interrogation trick. I suppose. That's fair enough. I turn around, grab the door to his cell, and shatter it into pieces. Now that gets a visible reaction from him. Well, I say. Would you look at that? Now there's nothing between you and freedom except me. And Jalissa, technically, but we both know you could fold her like a slice of bread. Rude, Jalissa mutters. I grin. But not inaccurate being the unspoken rejoinder, and she just owns that. Damn, I just don't get it. I have never met anyone so comfortable with being weak as Jelisaveta, and it's so refreshing every time. Especially since she is still a Templar and probably better in a fight than 95% of the population. She still somehow lacks even a shred of arrogance. But me? I continue. You don't have any idea what I am. And that's because the only thing even remotely like me lives 20,000 miles below. Smirking, I extend to him a thumbs down, Roscoe loosely wedged in the pit of my other arm. The gesture both points to my supposed older sibling and symbolically indicates his chances of beating me. Doubt flashes through him, warring between the audacity of my claim and his chances of getting through me even if it's a false one. Which, to be fair, I have no idea if it is. Do you really want to call my bluff, though? I ask him. Because I can and will crush your chitinous head like a grapefruit if we throw down. You won't need it after I reanimate you. Or you can just confirm something I already know and walk out happy with us. Honestly, I'm not asking for that much. I don't need your life story or whatever. I just don't like people trying to fool me. And then, as if just stretching, he folds all of that crazy bullshit back up into his face and talks without using any of it. The words just thrum out with no apparent motion on his part, like they're being expelled from his ass. I will not divulge any information that could potentially provide a military advantage to your people, he buzzes. Yeah, that's fine, I tell him bluntly. I didn't really expect you to. Do you have a name? He pauses for a moment. In your language my moniker would translate as, to kill from above. Charming, I answer dryly, and leave the cell. With the door busted, my promise is fulfilled. He can follow me or leave at his leisure. Lynn, who has been waiting outside, gives me a quick side hug and then follows in step, opposite to Jalissa. Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that you're letting the Hiverock soldier out if you had no compunctions about ours, Jalissa grumbles, but shouldn't you at least remember that these guys are seriously bad news? Why did you just let him go? He's not hostile, I tell her, and I really, really like his soul. Is that just how you judge everybody? She asks. Oh, your soul tastes like raspberry jam. I forgive your crimes. Jalissa falls into that thoughtful silence she always tends to when she doesn't want to admit that I have a point. But that's okay, I can tell she's actually thinking about it and that's more than I usually get around here. I have to ask, Jalissa eventually says, changing the subject. What was it like raising this girl, Miss Lynn? My mom barks out a laugh. Well, I don't know if I really raised her, per se. Raising people is more Vita's thing. Haha. Necromancer joke. Ugh, I grumble, eliciting further cackles from the incorrigible woman. But in all seriousness, as much as I call her my daughter. You've kept her in prison longer than I've known her, Inquisitor. Vita here mostly raised herself. My body trembles, threatening me with tears, but I square my jaw, squeeze my Roscoe, and start walking again. No sense wasting water. I finally had that taste of happiness, those couple months of genuine bliss, and I will get them back. It's pointless to mourn. It's also a shitty use of my time. Due to the remote nature of this place, any Templar reinforcements are going to be days away, assuming they even got notice at all. Still, a couple days is a pretty short amount of time to put distance between myself and whatever absurd force would get mobilized to an emergency at the prison holding Ars Rainier. Again, he's apparently a really big deal. I have shit to do and less time than I'd like to do it. Still, Jalissa must have noticed my reaction because the previous line of questioning quickly gets dropped, forcing her to initiate a not-so-smooth transition into a new one. "Are you sure you can help Melissa?" she asks. I sigh, rolling my extra eye. I mean, I'm not going to be sure until I do it, but I have dealt with a lot of similar problems before, both with slimes and animivores. I'm pretty damn confident. I let Jalissa take the lead, politely knocking on the door as the girl inside shapes herself into someone more presentable. She lets us into the sticky room, coated in cast-off residue from Melissa's own body, which congeals to the walls and floor, needing to be constantly replenished by meals that rejuvenate her mass without truly feeding her. The nervous, vaguely girl-shaped glob of golden ooze is filled with mana and a soul like a cracked plush, as if someone had frozen a stuffed animal and started chipping pieces off of it in bigger and bigger chunks. "Hey, Melissa. Have you been doing okay?" Jalissa asks cheerfully. Melissa blinks. "You're not Paris," she says fearfully. "Who are you?" The anguish that grips Jalissa's heart spills over into me. What must it be like to have someone you care for not even remember wait? Oh shit, is that part of what I was picking up from Altrix? "I'm Inquisitor Jelisaveta," Jalissa explains carefully. "You've only seen me with my helmet on, but..." The goop girl twitches and jiggles as she tries to process that, struggling painfully against her own fracturing psyche. Jelisaveta. Alright. Yes. Yes, I remember. You're not supposed to take off your helmet. Rules have changed, I tell her. Melissa turns to look at me, though I'm fairly certain the action is entirely performative. It's not like she has eyes. Still, her ability to mimic body parts is actually kind of impressive. She can talk by using air pockets in her body as faux lungs, even. It would be pretty cool if she could also see, but if she does it's not with organs. "I am really sorry, I don't remember you." Ouch, this poor girl. "We've never met," I reassure her. "I'm Vita, this is my mom Lynn, and I'm going to help make sure you don't forget things like that anymore. Can you hold still for me?" Experimentally, I poke a tentacle into her body, making sure it doesn't have any of my mana floating inside it, since that would no doubt react poorly. Nonetheless, I have to quickly yank it back out as an unexpected pain shoots through me. Shit, soul damage hurts so much more than physical damage. Well, damage. It hurt a lot, but it didn't really injure my tentacle at all. Still, I really should have expected that pain, considering that this creature eats souls, but oh well. Now I know. I pull out a soul shard and flick it inside of her, expecting to see it dissolve away and repair her right up. But it doesn't. The fully intact shard just starts making its way towards her soul as if it was about to fuse with it like one of my revenants. Which is, really bad. Immediately, I plunge 3 tentacles into her and grab my shard back, resisting the urge to scream for the split second that takes. "Vita?" Jalissa prompts, worry dripping from her tone. "Do we know if Melissa died before or after becoming an Ozoid?" I ask her. Melissa twitches, her whole body shuddering as Jalissa sends me a scathing look. "I'm not trying to be rude, I actually need to know," I say flatly. "Did I? I died. But Melissa looks at her own gooey hands, her whole body starting to come apart. "Before or after, Jalissa," I press. "Before," Jalissa hisses. "Her body was found at the scene, with far worse injuries than acid burns." A Vrothizo-like situation, maybe? Do animavorous ozoids normally consume their prey alive? Can they just not digest anima without a body to dissolve as well? No, wait, that doesn't make any sense. If you dissolve an undead body you will also dissolve the soul, but if you dissolve a living body the soul will be just fine. So that can't be it. Their digestion system is magic resistible, I infer. What does that mean? Lynn asks. Jalissa and Lynn start giving me matching "oh shit what have we gotten ourselves into" looks, which amuses me greatly. But also it means I know how to help her, I finish. Just give me a sec. Melissa's soul, even as a child, was probably just too big for a much weaker Ozoid to overcome, so it didn't get eaten. It got fused. If that happens any time one of these things eats a soul too big for it, then well. At the very least, Penelope is going to want to meet this girl. And in the best case, we might have immortality step 1. I therefore can't keep the excitement from creeping through my body as I crush and feed Melissa a hearty helping of soul dust. The look on her self-sculpted face as she takes in the largest and most nutritious meal she's had in a decade and a half is downright rapturous, and I watch with significant satisfaction as the blasphemous food starts working to patch up the cracks in her being almost immediately. It takes a depressingly large number of crushed shards to fix the worst of the damage, but the results speak for themselves. Literally, in this case, since the first thing Melissa does is babble excitedly. Oh. Jelisaveta, she announces joyfully. Jelisaveta, it's so much clearer, not flashes and pieces. I can think about you and it doesn't get lost. I don't know why I end up thinking about that while Jalissa literally starts crying with relief, chatting with Melissa and just generally being overjoyed at how much better she seems to be feeling. I'm glad it worked, though it reminds me I have revenants at home that hopefully aren't suffering a similar fate to Melissa. If Vitamin has been like this for 2 years, I don't know what I'll do. Hopefully Penelope figured something out. The rest of the upper floors and the prisoners therein aren't very exciting compared to a Hiverock soldier and an immortal goo child. Only a few people rush off on their own to brave the forest by themselves, though, so I collect a pretty large following by the time we make it to the 4th floor from the top, where the cooking and cleaning staff have all locked themselves in a large storeroom to try and hide from us. Obviously that doesn't work out for them. They're complicit, after all. If not for these people, the Templars would never have been able to run this place. That means I have plans for them. Hey! I call out as I boot down the door to the room they're all hiding in. Any chance you could cook us all some food? 20 minutes later, everyone in the prison has piled themselves into the mess hall, waiting for the cooks and servers to do their jobs at sight for one last time. Well, technically they are barely doing half their jobs, as they normally cook food for a prison with substantially more living people in it. Between the Templars and the prisoners I deemed too evil and crazy to live, barely a quarter of the former residents here willing and otherwise are still alive. The 1st floor looks like it was once a deadly kill zone, but Sky seems to have obliterated everyone there, leaving Mateo and Netta to defend the elevator for us. I gave them both a hug, but they declined to join us for a meal. Which makes sense, I guess, considering that they can't eat. They didn't seem hungry for soul stuff either, so I guess they've been getting food somehow while I've been away. That's reassuring. All in all, I have just under 30 former prisoners, 18 serving staff, 4 Templar prisoners, and 8 Templar revenants including Manus and Ice Guy. The Templar prisoners include Jelisaveta and Victoria, obviously, but I found 2 more that actually fled and hid from the carnage after watching Sky rip a dozen of their comrades to shreds. On penalty of my mother's disappointment, I bound them in collars instead of killing them both. Later, perhaps. In the meantime, my interesting fellow ex-prisoners have been up to some fascinating things. Jeremiah in particular has been organizing some of the prisoners and the former staff to start constructing makeshift sleds outside the building on which he intends to load food and other supplies. So he's pretty smart, and I'm glad to have him. I also really liked his answer when I asked who would be pulling sleds over miles of rough road. We are both necromancers, Vita. Is who really the right question? What a guy. I knew he smelled good. But enough of that nonsense. It's time to eat. The non-Templar staff of Site 4 are being pretty good sports about this whole takeover deal, all things considered. I basically just explained that I had no intention of hurting them or letting them get hurt, offered to let them tag along on the road so they aren't stuck here waiting for help to maybe arrive at the top secret base no one is allowed to enter or leave, and asked for one more meal for the road. Are they absolutely terrified of us anyway? Oh yeah, definitely. But what am I supposed to do about that? They are making us a hearty stew and right now that's pretty much the only thing I can think about. Most food tastes the same to me nowadays, but for the past year I have not at all been feeling properly full from prison rations, even with Jalissa passing me larger and better portions in the last month or so. I'm just so goddamn hungry all the time, and the thought of massive pots of vegetables and shed claw meat from which I can devour as much as I want has me vibrating with excitement. Us prisoners are all mulling about in the cafeteria, a few conversational groups forming but most people sitting relatively far apart from each other. Nyx is back to being the primary face of Ultrix, and while she sits next to Vicky and is guarding her like I asked, she has also been actively avoiding me. I'm sitting across from Jalissa and next to Lynn, the latter of whom I'm happily leaning on to try and start paying off 2 years' worth of HUD deficit. Roscoe is, of course, on my lap. I'm surprised when the cooks start coming out of the kitchen and personally serving the stew, and I have no idea whether or not I should be. I don't think I've ever been served before. Penelope and I always avoided any restaurant that would cater to nobles, so even at my fanciest, my meals tended to cap out at outdoor food stalls. There are certainly no servers in the Hunters Guild mess hall. But I mumble a startled thank you when a girl drops off a bowl for me, and immediately begin to dig in. I am not at all happy when my meal is interrupted. Hey! I shout at him. He's a few tables down. Hands off her. Chill out, he crows back to me. We're just having a little fun. If you can cuddle a pretty lady I don't see why I can't. I jump, sailing over the heads of those sitting between us to land on his table, my soft, Epsilon security-approved socks nearly cracking it in half. His stew bowl goes flying, but I catch it with my elbow tentacle. Can't let food go to waste. In evidence of this man's unparalleled lack of intellect, he still hasn't unwrapped his arm from the waist of the damn girl, who has quickly gone from worried and uncomfortable to mortally terrified. Still on the table, I squat down so I can look at the two of them eye to eye. Go ahead and leave if you'd like, I tell the server chef pleasantly. And thanks again for the food. Her fear of me successfully overpowers her fear of the asshole holding onto her and she squirms free, her padding footsteps the only noise in the hall as I retrain my glare on the captain of the Grand Idiot Caravan. He stammers. You know, I figured this was a party. A celebration, right? I didn't think you'd care about. I cut him off by lashing out and grabbing his neck with my Roscoe-free arm, lifting him out of his seat as I stand up. Sorry, he wheezes out, clutching his testicles and trying not to cry. Message received. But can I just speak my mind for a second? Are you going to kill me if I do? Go for it, I allow. I raise my eyebrows. Well, I can see why he wanted the reassurance I wouldn't hurt him for that. Well, just don't think of it like that, I smirk at him. Think of me as your liberator. Think of me as the goddess looking over your shoulder. Think of me as the one who very literally ate a High Templar for breakfast this morning. I flex my hands, physical tentacle writhing. My spiritual ones, too, for those that can see them. My instincts scream danger as every eye in the room watches me return to my seat and resume my meal, but those instincts are the ones learned by the old me, the powerless me. These people are not sizing me up as a mark, oh no. They have finished their assessments, and their conclusions all fall somewhere between fear and reverence. I feel a very strange concoction of emotions coming from both Jalissa and Lynn, so I glance up just to see a pair of equally odd facial expressions. Pride, worry, disappointment, respect, man, they really have the works. What? I ask. Did you know that publicly declaring yourself a monarch is grounds for treason? Jalissa asks idly. I roll my eyes. Oh no, treason, I drawl. Now they'll send the Templars after me. Lynn busts out laughing, and I enjoy the rest of my meal.